Namaste. Welcome to another episode of Yoga Vasishta. Now we're going to talk about Book 1, Chapter 12, Ramas Reply. Vālmīki related, being thus asked by the chief of the sages with soothing words, Rama answered in a soft and graceful speech, replete with good sense. O venerable sage, untutored though I am, I will tell you in truth all the particulars as you asked. For who would disobey the bidding of the wise? Since I was born in this my father's palace, I have remained here, grown up and received my education. Then, O leader of sages, desiring to learn good customs, I set out to travel to holy places all over this sea-surrounded earth. By this time, a series of reflections arose in my mind that shook my confidence in worldly objects. I employed my mind to discriminate the nature of things, which gradually led me to discard all thoughts of sensual enjoyments. So you see, the theory that I advanced in one of the earlier episodes was correct. While he was on pilgrimage, being exposed to the outside world after growing up in a bubble of his father's palace, Rama was forced to confront the actuality of human existence and suffering. And this had a very sobering effect on him, to say the least. So he began to reflect on this. Why is it that we must suffer? What causes our problems in life? What is it that makes us do things that cause us pain in the future? And why do we think in error that these will give us pleasure? All these are called delusions. And the biggest delusion, of course, is the ego. I am a separate individual. I am, and some people even say, an eternal soul. I have this identity forever and ever, and I can never get rid of it. But it is this sense of egotism that leads us to desire. I want this, I want that. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Desire leads to greed. Greed leads to all sorts of unlawful activities. And because of those, we get reactions. Just like the whole human race right now is suffering from the reaction of the earth to their horrible activities. Especially the dominator culture, which spread from Northern Europe all over the world, now is engaging everyone in the total rape of the earth's resources. So of course, the earth is responding to that. What do you think? You think the earth is just a lump of dull matter? No. Such a huge body has to have intelligence. And if you irritate it, if you begin to destroy it and bother it, of course it's going to react. If a mosquito lands on my ear, I'm going to slap it. Similarly, the earth, being bothered by all the nonsense activities of humans, is changing the climate, withdrawing so many species that were beneficial to us. We thought that they were pests, and so we tried to extinguish them. But it looks like we're the ones who are going to wind up extinguished before long, unless we change our ways. So Rama is saying some very profound things here. He's answering Vishvamitra and saying, who would disobey the bidding of the wise? In other words, his servants and companions, and even his family members like his brother, his cousins, and even his father, were not enough to get him to respond, to expose the source of his melancholy, his depression. But when Vishvāmitra called him, he answered, and you'll see he's going to answer very fully, very completely, and in detail. Because who would disobey the bidding of the wise? This is another level of authority. This is another level of trustworthiness. Because even Rama's father has some agenda in trying to cure his depression. He's trying to get Rama fit as his successor to ensure the political continuation of his government. So because of this, Rama is holding back. He's not revealing the actual source of his disturbances. But when Vishvāmitra calls him, he's ready to tell all. Why? Because who would disobey the bidding of the wise? The wise have only the benefit of all as their purpose. They have no personal gain to extract from any situation. Of course, nowadays there are many pseudo-wise people. There are many people pretending to be gurus and so forth. Many imposters, many counterfeits, many bogus teachings that won't help anyone. So it's intelligent for us to discriminate. But when we find someone who is actually wise, who actually knows the path to enlightenment, or rather the methods, because each individual's path is different. When we find that person who's really interested in helping us overcome our depression, that's the time when we should open up and engage in this dialogue. So, in other words, depression is not something to be denied. It's not something to be suppressed. As long as we have someone truly wise to counsel us. Because that person is going to help us overcome the doubts that have led to our depression. Rama continues. What are worldly pleasures good for? And why do men multiply on earth? Men are born to die, and they die to be born again. There is no stability in the tendencies of beings, whether movable or immovable. They all tend to vice, decay, and danger, and all our possessions become the grounds of our poverty. All objects of sense are detached from each other like iron rods from one another. It is only imagination which attaches them to our minds. It is the mind that pictures the existence of the world as a reality. But if we know the deceptiveness of the mind, we are safe from such deception. Now maybe you think Rama is exaggerating here. Maybe you think, oh, the poor boy, he's gotten such a shock at the state of the world, and now he's depressed, and so he's just down on everything. But what if this is true? What if this is really the way it is, and Rama is speaking the truth? And we have to take another look at this. He's saying it is only imagination which attaches the objects of our senses to the mind. And it is the mind that pictures the existence of the world as a reality. That means, is there something real behind our idea of the world or not? Well, people are going to say, I can see reality. I can see it with my own eyes. I can hear it with my ears and so on. But are we really seeing the reality? Or is it just pictures? And our imagination stitches those pictures into a dream of a world that actually doesn't exist. At least not in the way we think it does. Let's take a look at one sense, the sense of sight. What happens when we see something? Okay, so here's the eyes, the optic nerves, the optic chiasm, then the visual cortex. Out there is the world and objects, and the light from whatever sun or moon or other light source is present reflects off of those objects. At least that's the theory. And it comes into our eyes. Our eyes are like a camera. They have lenses in the front and a screen on the back. So the images are focused by the lenses on the retina. And of course, being a single lens, the image is upside down and backwards. It's inverted, because that's what a single lens does. It inverts the image, right to left, up and to down. So here we have this backwards and upside down image being transmitted through the optic nerves, through the optic chiasm and the optic tract. And what happens? Well, in the optic tract, the separate images are reversed, flipped upside down again, processed, and perspective is added or deduced from the different parallax of the images, and then it's passed on to the visual cortex. So in the visual cortex, we have a representation, not a picture. The picture was maybe the image on the retina, but then that gets transformed into electrical signals, which are processed by different areas of the brain, and it winds up back here in the visual cortex, right at the top of the spine. And then what happens? Well, the Buddha describes that there is such a thing as immediate consciousness or immediate perception. An immediate perception is simply the image of the thing we see. But then there's something that happens called reflexive consciousness or reflexive perception. And as the name suggests, it's a reflex of the mind, which takes that raw image and then classifies it in some category according to memory. And usually it will also add a name. This is the name of the thing. For example, we see this platform with 4 legs, and we say, oh, that's a table. Why? We've seen so many tables before, and this thing has the physical attributes to be able to act as a table, to perform the function of a table. So we identify it as a table. But wait a minute. What does that have to do with the raw image that we get on our retinas? As it turns out, it's mostly software. There was a very interesting experiment performed in Harvard back in the beginning of the 20th century, where they gave people glasses that would invert the images, just like the lenses of the eye do. In other words, people suddenly were seeing upside down and right to left backwards. So, of course, at first they got terrible headaches, and they were stumbling around and they couldn't do anything. But the experiment continued for some time, and after about 2 weeks, suddenly the subjects were able to see things right side up and right way round instead of upside down and backwards. And they were able to navigate through the world and perform tasks and so on, just like before. Well, what happened? The visual cortex reprogrammed itself to process the images received through the eyes so that they made sense according to the physical models in our minds. So if that could happen, then that means that the visual cortex could reprogram itself in a whole other way and see things in yet a different way than seen before. And that's exactly what happens in deep meditation. But we'll get into that later. For now, I want to keep going with Rama's reply. He finally gets to his question. Now tell me, O venerable sir, is this world advancing to its dissolution or continued reproduction? Or is it in endless progression? If there is any progress here, is it the appearance and disappearance by turns of old age and disease, and of prosperity and adversity? See how the variety of our trifling enjoyments hastens our decay. They are like hurricanes, shattering trees in the mountains. Men continue in vain to breathe their vital breath, like hollow bamboo windpipes, having no sense. The thought that consumes me like wildfire in the hollow of a withered tree is, how is misery to be alleviated? So here we finally get to the core of Rama's concern. And first of all, I want to highlight, he addresses Vishvamitra very respectfully. O venerable sir. This is a sign of intelligence. Most people today treat spiritual teachers very casually, calling them by their first name, not using any titles, or not even speaking respectfully with them, but arguing, trying to put forward their own theories, trying to justify some belief that they have that they probably just read in a book and is third hand, fourth hand anyway. So people today don't know how to approach an enlightened person. And because of that, they miss the benefits of inquiry from the sage. So here is Rama finally getting around to exposing his core concern. How is suffering to be alleviated? And remember, he himself, Rama, has no real suffering. He grew up in a totally sheltered environment, a bubble of his father's palace. It wasn't until he went outside, just like the Buddha, and saw how ordinary people are suffering. And this is a mark of his good breeding, that the kshatriyas, the kings of old, were trained from the beginning to keep uppermost in their mind the benefit of the people that they were responsible for, unlike leaders today, who are just selfish pigs. The leaders of old actually cared about the people under their charge. And so they had sages counseling them how to maintain the state for the benefit of all. That means they were worthy of our respect. They had integrity. They had compassion. They were real rulers. So Rama is like that. He's not concerned for himself. Whatever happens to him, he's going to be okay. He's the son of a great king, the emperor. So indeed, whatever he does, his life is going to turn out better than almost anybody's. He's concerned about the people under his charge. He has seen their suffering. And now he's saying, how can that suffering be alleviated? And in the future chapters, Rama is going to expand on this question in great detail. Om Tat Sat. Om Harihi Om.
கருணார்ணவமாய் கருதக்கதி நல்கும் அருணாச்சல சிவம் ஈதாம்.